Welcome everybody back to Veil of Sound. This is one of our last Sunday interviews before the August break. You know, little me also has to take a break, and I will do that in August. So no interviews running in August from our side. And I'm very happy to have one of those people here, of whom a fellow writer of us said, well, this band makes me believe in music again. So I'm very happy to have Bryan Funck from Vow here. So Bryan, thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Sorry, I got some unruly animals in the house right now.
Yeah, mine are upstairs, but I'm afraid to call my wife that to her face. So, you know. Bryan, first thing that we always ask here, and I hope that you have something for us, is there any kind of band merch, shirt, vinyl, anything from Vow or from any band of your friends that you would like to pluck at this very moment? I'll give you a moment to think, because I want to pluck a very nice shirt that I got at Debut Morty a few weeks ago, Insect Arc. Great band, cool shirt. So, Bryan, have you got anything?
Sure. My girlfriend's got a project called Silver Godling that I think is incredible. She's got 2 LPs out and a few other little things. All of that stuff's amazing. Silver Godling. And then Andy from Thou just released electronic record under his thing, Supplicate. That's awesome. It's I think it's only a cassette right now, but really good. It's on Spotify and stuff. People want to check it out.
So if you want to find out what he's talking about, look at our little text beneath here, and you will find the links to those 2 projects. Bryan, when I listened to the new record, to Umbilical, I had the feeling as if this was a little noisier, a little, but not noisy in an angry, aggravated, pushy way, but I felt as if it was a little noisier in the subtle layers underneath the tracks. Is that something that my weird mind just thinks, or is there some more industrial noise?
No, I mean we definitely purposely made it a lot noisier than our normal records would be. I mean, the recording has like an entire guitar track, like a junk guitar that's just distortion playing underneath everything. There's all kinds of layers of stuff from the production end of things on stuff. Honestly, it was even noisier and more industrial electronic sounding in the earlier mixes. James Whitten, the guy that records most of our stuff, he had put a ton of electronic drums all over everything, just extra noises and bits added to things. We kind of reined in a little bit. Okay. Yeah, I mean, we definitely wanted to make it noisier. In terms of the Thou output, we wanted to make it noisier than our standard stuff.
Yeah, it sounded to me a little bit more portrayal of guild / street sects, like that kind of noise, which is a very nice shade. I think that lends itself very well to the songs. Because for everybody who has not yet listened to Umbilical, first of all, shame on you, and second of all, it is also much more straightforward hardcore, which I like. Straightforward in a Vow sense, right? It's not agnostic front, to make that clear.
If only.
if only, okay, that would be a goal.
maybe for me, probably not the other guys, but yeah.
It's interesting. You know, when I listen to some of the tracks, especially the first 2 or 3 of them, I have a feeling as if you guys once again have a lot to say. And I'm like, I know about your ethics and your morals, but like, if we think about at the very, very moment where we are, 2024, would you say that there is even more to say than normally because of the state that we are living in at the moment?
I mean, I don't know. I think there's always the impulse to feel like the the present is the worst it's gonna be and the worst it's ever been. I don't know if that's necessarily true. I mean, it's kind of funny to me that you say like, oh, well, I know your stance on things, your morals or whatever, like, you know, because the original impulse for the record for us was to sort of write a sort of like line in the sand kind of record where we very explicitly stated certain things we believed in, because I think we were getting a lot of people latching onto us for whatever reason that like didn't share our values. And you know, we've always sort of thought it was clear sort of where we stood socially.
I would also think so.
Well, I don't know. I mean, judging by some of the people that sort of started coming around, it felt like maybe not so much. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, so what do you think?
I mean, like if we take a track like Narcissist's Prayer, I mean, like, I don't want to say it's your most political track ever, but I think it has a very clear message, you know, like getting away from being egotistical, getting away from selfishness, trying to be a little bit more social in a positive kind of way, right?
I mean, I don't know if I don't know if I would necessarily like think of that song in those terms.
But
I mean, well, because the record, I mean, you know, it's hard to say. I mean, the record itself is sort of written as a like criticism of the band and the individuals and how we interact with each other and how we interact with the world. You know, and so that's like the starting point, you know, for how I started writing things. And then, you know, the ideas are sort of like broaden a bit from there. And I also try to write it in a way where it's a little bit open to interpretation. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if I was explicitly writing about social issues. You know, in terms of that song specifically, it was more in the failings of art and artistic ventures as having a meaningful impact on the world.
Do you think that the influence that art has is like getting less and less?
No, I mean, I wouldn't say that. I mean, the thing you have to understand about like Thou and specifically like a Thou song or you know, a Thou song, like just looking at a Thou song, like I don't write the music in terms of like the answers to all of life's questions or whatever.
Okay, that's
like
good.
like when I write a song, when I'm writing a song, it's tackling a very specific question or feeling in my mind and taking a very specific stance or response to it. And that response isn't the totality of how I feel even about that issue. It's just what I want to explore in the context of that specific song. So, yeah, I mean, you know, if we went back and dissected like the Thou catalog or whatever,
we would need a lot of time.
Sure. Too much time. There's a lot of conflicting ideas, you know, and I mean, that's the point of the band for me, is to sort of explore my conflicting ideas, like the things I'm grappling with, you know, not to explicitly like have an answer to those things, just to sort of like talk about how I'm feeling about it at the time.
So then, I mean, the way you describe it, it's a very personal and also a very introspective way of writing. Nevertheless, I have a feeling as if, you know, there is a certain kind of not social agenda. That may be too much, but I feel when listening to the tracks, when reading the lyrics, because sorry, but sometimes they're hard to understand. You got to read them. I have a feeling as if I'm like, it's very interesting that you say that it's also about the interaction within the band, but I also have a feeling as if it's about the interaction between you as individuals, you as band members, and also on a higher level, on the way that we treat each other. For example, you know, sometimes I have a feeling as if you are trying to, yeah, as if you are trying to give hope to people that sometimes feel a little neglected or a little put down.
Yeah, I mean, I think if anything, it's more of a message to myself, you know, like the record is explicitly you know, like I said, it's sort of a critique of the band or our social inadequacies, but more explicitly, it's a critique of my social inadequacies and my issues and blah blah blah. So, you know, it's really more about trying to figure out how I want to present myself in the world, how I want to interact with the people around me, how I want to, you know, treat the people around me. You know, and sure, I mean, you put this thing together, you put it out there, and the hope is that people can pull something from that. But that's like a byproduct for me. I mean, I kind of worry less about what other people are going to take. I mean, I hope that's always the hope, sure, but you know, honestly, it's got to be a thing that you know, the art has to be something I care about, regardless of if anybody else is going to care about it. You know, the way I always treat it is that if I like to think of us as like operating in a vacuum sometimes, where it's like we're just trying to be as honest as possible and as honest as possible with the creativity also, you know.
So then please allow me the question. You know, you've talked about your own inadequacies. How hard is it then for you to basically strip down to these problems for yourself?
Oh, I grew up Catholic, so not hard at all. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've always been introspective. I've always been, you know, I'm a highly opinionated person, and I'm not shy about sharing my opinions about things. But I've always had the philosophy that if you're going to criticize people or the things or whatever around you, you have to be willing to turn that on yourself, and you have to be willing to like have an even harsher, stricter eye with yourself. So no, that's not hard. That was easy. That's like you know, that I will have material for years if I'm just dissecting myself and all of my problems.
So how do your bandmates react when you come up with ideas for tracks, for lyrics? Is it always, okay, that's cool, we'll do it, or is there a lot of discussion?
There's not. The more the discussion is, maybe a song title or the placement of vocal lines and this and that. They don't, at this point, the level of trust in the band is pretty. They'll let me write in terms of like the lyrics. I could write whatever I wanted to say. I mean, the thing is, the way I write lyrics is so I could be writing whatever about whatever, because my writing style is such that it's sort of like usually dressed up in a manner where it's not you know, it doesn't come across as, I hope, as us like proselytizing or, you know, trying to like lay down a bunch of rules or something. I mean, I wish I could write straightforward songs. Like I wish I could write like Sam McPheeters or Left for Dead era Chris Callahan, or Joey Gates from the Ferries, like the really like, straightforward ish you know songs where where the band stands, but it's also not hokey and cliche. It's like clever, and I just can't write like that. When I try to write stuff like that, it comes across as super corny. I mean, that was part of like why I had to shift a bit when we started working on this record, because originally, like, I wanted to write a sort of like a mission statement of the band.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we
Mm-hmm.
this is what we believe. This is what we this
Mm-hmm.
and the more I started working on it, it was like it felt very disingenuous to for put us on a pedestal or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like it just felt silly. Like we do messed up stuff. We screw up all the time, like all the time. So like, what is the point of that? So
Mm-hmm.
then I sort of had to like shift the lens a bit, and rather than just sort of put out these ideas of like what we our stance on things, I had
Mm-hmm.
to sort of like write a record about where we're failing at
Mm-hmm.
those things, and hopefully people can sort of like pick that apart and figure out the meaning. But that was a more interesting way for me to approach writing about that, and more meaningful, and I had way more material. I mean, it's way easier for me to write about stuff I don't like than it is
Yeah.
trying to celebrate I don't know. Maybe it's like a thing where I'm just have an aversion to like being too prideful or something. Like I don't like that, and I don't like for as much hardcore as I listen to, I don't. That's not really my style.
I think I know what you mean. The way I always figured vow, and it still is the way that I always have a feeling as if, as you said, not putting yourself on a pedestal, not taking you as the role model, but making people think what their rules are, what their ideas on certain topics are. I mean, of course, there are points where you and I would very likely agree and say, like, okay, if you believe in A, B, and C, that doesn't work for me because I believe in D, E, and F. And those are just so contrary that it just doesn't work, which does not mean that I want to deny your existence as a human, but it's just the way that you and I will be hard pressed to interact. Would you consider, or did you consider yourself more of an outsider in earlier times nowadays?
Oh, certainly, and nowadays, yeah, of course. I mean, isn't that why most people? I mean, most people stick around, gravitate towards like punk and stuff. I mean, yeah, absolutely.
It's interesting that you mentioned punk because I think this is a very punk record. And I know that a lot of people will say, like, no, it's not. It doesn't. It has too many chords. It's too sludgy. It's too noisy. Blah 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 blah. Um, I always like a quote about punk by helmet guitar player and mastermind Page Hamilton, who once said that you don't have to look like shit or sound like shit to be punk. Would you agree that nowadays punk is more of a mental attitude and maybe certain values that we share, like being tolerant towards people, being open and not denying them certain rights for certain reasons?
Yeah, I mean, I've always asserted that that was a punk band, and
Mm-hmm.
I will definitely say that this is our punk record. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's any different nowadays than it was, 30 years ago. When I was coming up
Mm-hmm.
on hardcore in the 90s, the Ebullition stuff and the Vermiform stuff, like they didn't look like, spiky haired
Yeah.
punks or whatever, but to me, it was still punk. I mean,
Yeah.
the vegan straight edge stuff that I was listening to in the 90s, like that's Earth Crisis is punk to me, so uh I'm less concerned about the sound, the technicalities of the sound, more concerned with the attitude of the people. Yeah, and I mean, yeah, sure, I would agree that like progressive politics, I'd say like anarchist politics, like that's like the thing that qualifies something as punk or not for me.
In the press kit that we always get when we try to prepare, there is a very interesting quote by your band. You said that this is
well, probably by me.
Probably. There is one line that I would very much associate with what you just said. You spoke about this record is for those punched by the deep wounds of compromise. I understand what you mean, but isn't compromise up to a certain point exactly what real compromise? Isn't that what we would need a little bit more of?
Sure. I mean, I think I was expressly talking about the sort of ideological compromises that a band that's lasted this long has to make, will probably make to like reach a sort of level of longevity. You know, being concerned about finances or being associated with people or organizations that maybe in hindsight maybe shouldn't have done that thing or this thing or that thing or whatever. I mean, to me, that's sort of like it's more the compromise of you know, being a middle-aged person and trying to live a life that isn't completely reckless and uncomfortable and miserable.
And also one that is not, that doesn't have a negative effect on future generations?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't really think of, you know, like I said, the record and maybe that quote is more explicitly in my mind about like thou, and I don't really think I don't really think of thou in terms of our impact on anything you know, other than ourselves. But yeah, I mean, I certainly at this point in our lifespan, the thought of our legacy, for lack of a better word, has definitely come to mind. Like, and like not doing or accepting things that are sort of like sully that, or you know, when the thing ends and I'm looking back on it years later, I don't want to like be filled with regret or shame over something, you know. Sure. But that's what I meant. That's what I meant in terms of bad compromises, not the good compromises.
Sorry, I had to switch headphones. It's interesting that you talk about, you know, the way that this is a very introspective record, as most Vow songs and records are. When I listen to it as if there is a band who knows very well what they are doing, is that also a result of nearly 20 years being a band?
Yeah, I mean, definitely at this point, I think we've figured out each other's idiosyncrasies, for better or worse. I mean, I feel like we're finally getting to a point as a band where we're not beating our heads together a little bit, trying to like make each other change to fit, you know, what we need. It's more, I think everybody's sort of like gotten to a point where they're have adjusted, and you know, if there's an issue, they sort of like usually make whatever change they need personally. Yeah, and I mean, I don't know, some of those, Matthew and Andy have been playing together since they were like preteens, you know, so they've always sort of been, at least musically, like in sync. And Mitch has been playing with those guys since they were teenagers, I think. So yeah, I mean, and even Tyler, who's like the newest member.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've known him since he was a teenager, and he's at this point he's been in the band for, I don't know, like 6 years or something. So yeah, I mean, we're definitely in sync when it comes to all that stuff. And we don't, you know, we're so spread out. We do stuff so sparsely. Like I feel like we don't see each other to get on each other's nerves enough.
It's interesting that a person with a band who has such a vast discography, so many releases, says that, oh, we don't see each other that often. It's more sparsely. For example, I skipped through your Discogs today, and I'm not sure if you know, but I counted it. How many items of Vow are listed on Discogs? What do you guess?
I don't know. It's probably like 50 or 60 different releases, but that's all smoke and mirrors, you know. Like,
I know. Well, it officially says 79. I know there are things that are doubles and with the compilation records and all of that. It's probably somewhere like 60-ish. I also counted the collaboration records that you did. 25.
Yeah, I mean, but again, it's like we've done 3 collaborations. You know, there's 3 collaborations. There's 6 records, and then there's a handful of like material spread out over EPs and splits and stuff. I mean, it's a lot. I mean, look, it's a lot.
Yeah.
At this point, I can admit it's a lot. It's a lot. Even when you sort of consolidate everything, it's still a lot. Maybe too much. I don't know. I almost feel like maybe there was some quality. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's great, because if they called me up today and said, "Hey, we're done. That's it," I would be proud of the amount and the quality of stuff that we've released. You know, there's nothing for me to look back on and feel like, oh, well, we didn't go for it. We didn't do it. Like, I feel like we did. We put in the work.
Yeah.
We put out the releases. You know,
you're talking about the mouth is. Yes.
Right. You know, at the top of the thing, you asked me about merch and blah blah. In my brain, my brain immediately goes to like some bands we tour with or bands we play shows with or whatever, where they have like a zillion T-shirts and maybe a record. Nah, I mean, that doesn't play like that. Like, you know, you come see us at a show, we got a table full of records. Like, we're a band to make music, not to like make T-shirts or whatever, you know. So I don't know. I'm proud of our output.
And you can and should be. Where I was heading with that question is we've been speaking about experience. Is that also the way that, you know, the number of collaborations have become a little less? Collaboration split EPs,
well,
however you want to call that.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, a collaboration and a split to me is like
that's a different. Yeah, but releases with you and another band, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I wanted to ask is, like, you know, in the beginning, more of these, and it's become a little less. Is that also a sign that, you know, you are striving, just like you said a little bit, you're striving for something where you can be very sure, okay, this will last, this will keep its worth within the next couple of decades?
I mean,
or do you just choose your partners a little bit more carefully?
I mean, there's some of that, a little bit of that in all of it, and in none of it. You know, like, I mean, part of why in my mind we've sort of just, the band slowed down a bit over the last 10 years is people moving all over the place. I mean, at one point, right after Heathen, it's like 2014, maybe 2013, 2012, whenever we recorded it, Andy and Mitch moved to the other side of the country. And ever since then, we've had band members not all living in the same place, which slows us down. Right now, Tyler, the drummer, was in Chicago, which is 14, 16 hours from here. So it's not close. Like, it's not easy for us to do stuff. So when we do get together, it's a couple of days at a time where we're rehearsing, or a week where we're writing or whatever, recording. So we sort of have to like make the time count when we get together. But that also means that we're not getting together every week to practice like we used to. And those practices was like that. Part of that was like kept us on a schedule where somebody would be motivated to bring new material, so we'd have some new stuff to work on. They try to impress or outdo each other, whatever. So there's not that. I mean, the other part of it is when the band started, we weren't thinking of the band lasting this long. When I joined the band, the longest bands I've been in maybe 2 years, so I just thought it was going to be like that, another band like that. Even if it was a serious, good band, 2-3 years, and then it's done. So I was never thinking it's going to last so long. So, after the first record or two and touring, you make friends with bands, and bands ask you to do stuff. You make friends with people with labels, and labels ask you to do stuff. We would just say yes to everything. Somebody asked, "Oh, you want to do this? You want to do that?" Yeah, we want to do it. We'd say yes, and then we get to writing and figuring out what we were going to do for the thing. Nowadays it's less like that. I mean, the last X amount of years, really since Summit, I would say, which was like, I think we recorded it in 2009, 2010. So really like last 10 or 15 years, we've been a lot, I don't want to say choosier, but more intentional about how we do things. Like when we traditionally, as we're writing a record, a full length, you come up with songs that don't quite fit the sound or the feel that you're going for with the record, at least for us. But it's good material, and when you're motivated to write something and you think it's good, you got to just kind of follow it and do the thing, even if it isn't going to fit in this box. We would write it and finish it, whatever. And we go and record. We record a batch of stuff. We record the record, and we record all the other stuff we wrote at the same time. And so, then you start stripping away those things that don't quite fit the record. And, maybe that's an EP. Maybe there's a couple extra songs where we're going to do a split with somebody or whatever. Or, like at some point after Heathen, the rest of us that stayed in Louisiana kept practicing every week, and we're writing stuff and came up with some stuff that didn't feel like it was going to be the next record, but it felt like good material. And so we had those songs for a split. And, you go on tour. We went on tour with Screaming Females and Here's was like, "Oh, you guys want to do a split?" And we're like, "Yeah, we want to do a split. We don't have any material. The only thing we have are there's like 10 Nirvana covers we just randomly recorded because we learned them for a cover show, and then we had downtime, so we went and recorded them. And they're like, "Oh, well, we'll do Nirvana covers too." So you just, so stuff like that just sort of organically kind of happened. The collaborations for us is like a much bigger thing. Those collaboration records were like way more intense. I mean, the body sort of like pushed us to do the first one, and that sort of unlocked something in our brains about, oh, we can do this. And we've always had people sort of like jump on parts or songs or whatever. Emily McWilliams, so I mentioned Silver Godling, she's been singing on the outtracks almost since I joined. I mean, we got her on, I think the first thing she was on was the split with Leach. She sings on some of that, and she wrote a string thing on the split with Salome. So she's sort of been collaborating with us almost. We think of her and our friend Derek Zimmer and James Whitten, who records also. In our brains, they're like almost like members of the band at this point. You know, we don't even think of them in terms of like people that like guests. They're just another person that like they're not in the core group that like gets together and practices every week, but they're people we can sort of like call on to come help us when there's a part or thing we can't do, or there's a piece, oh, this would be great if they jumped on this or that and would sound, you know, whatever. So you know, we always sort of had that collaborative spirit, but the body really unlocked the idea of like, oh, let's get in a practice room and like write songs with another band or musician. I mean, we've been a little conservative about who we've done stuff with because you know, the body's just the two of them, and Emma is just Emma, and Mismer is just Liam. So it's not like we're adding a full, you know, another 5 or 6 people are coming to the practice space and we're all cramming in there and trying to figure out what it is. It's just adding another person. It's just fairly, I don't want to say easy, but it's in my mind a little easier than say if
well, it's easier if you do that than, you know, invite the armed, which, you know, like,
yeah, or like if we were gonna, like, say we were gonna do something with Full of Hell, like that's the thing that, you know, there's stuff like that that sort of like rattles around my brain sometimes. I'm like, oh, how will we even do, like, how would we figure it out? And is that too many people? And do we just some of us meet up? Like, how do you do that? And this, you know, so yeah, I mean, it hasn't been, we've tried to be smart about how we do it, and but also do it in a way that like works for us and where we can squeeze the most out of the creatively out of the, you know, that mixture of people.
Well, you will have enough time to talk to Dylan and all the others in Full of Hell when you go to Australia and New Zealand in August. Right?
We're going to be too busy cutting up and having a good time to talk.
But I know what you mean. Of course, it's easier to bring one person in than like a 4 or 5 piece band, of course.
Yeah, I don't even know what was the question. What was the question?
No, you just rambled on, and I love that. That is totally fine with me. Is there an act where you say like, okay, that would be a dream collaboration, not just like a split, but a dream collaboration to work with?
I don't know. I mean, at one point I had this idea of doing a sort of like pop industrial record, like a Pretty Hate Machine type record, and like Zola Jesus or our friend Kristen Hayter, you know, does Lingua Ignota. Like those are people I sort of like had in my mind for that, and I have been sort of working on that thing with James off and on for the last X amount of years, and it's probably the next like Thou thing that I'm gonna be working on while we have a little bit of downtime before we start writing the next stuff. I don't know. We'll see where that goes. I mean, I don't know what you like. What, like Jack Black comes and play? I don't know. Weird Al comes in. That
is too much of a novelty song.
I don't know. I love Weird Al. I don't Vegan Straight Edge. I don't I just don't think of, I mean, I don't know. Yeah. Like Eddie Vedder comes and does something with us. Like I don't know. I mean, I think we're always so I mean, I know, speaking for myself, I'm always so focused on the next thing right in front of me that like I don't have you know, the next thing I'm gonna do, like I'm less thinking about like the sort of like dream stuff. You know, Zola Jesus or like Kristen, like those are people we just reach out to them. I could call them up or text them or hit them up and email them or whatever, and I would just do, you know, I mean, if we wanted to do it, if we had an idea and it was going to go somewhere, we would just do it. So I don't, there's no, we don't leave a lot. Thou is not a lot of band, is it not a band that, for better or worse, leaves too much on the table. Like if we have an idea or something and we have the time and the motivation to follow it up, like we just kind of go for it.
You say that in a very negative way. I would still see that as a very, very positive thing. Because as much as I like well thought through music if it's done well. I also still have a knack for bands and for performers that trust their gut. I think that is something that we don't have enough of these days. But it's interesting that you're talking about the next thing. It seems to me, it always seems in this interview and with Thou in general, as if it's a very driven band. I mean, you've spoken about the fact that, you know, the drummer now lives in Chicago, but would you still say that the band itself and maybe you as a person are, I don't want to use the word workaholics because that's so negative, but that you just simply like to be busy?
I mean, I don't know if we like to be busy. We like to be active. And I don't know, we go back and forth on this. We argue about this a little bit. You know, some people want a little downtime, this and that. But like, I mean, like for me, I have a very full life. I fill it with things to do. Like I don't like to sit still. I have stuff to, you know, I got time. I want to spend it wisely. I want to do stuff. I want to be proactive. And, you know, my argument has been, especially lately, because my life is like so full of stuff. You know, if we put the band down for 6 months, a year, we don't do nothing. Like in 6 months or a year, I will have filled up all that time with other things. And I might not want to pick it dial back up again. You know, if we put it down for a little bit, my personal fear is that, well, that might be it. If I don't stay. Now it's easy for when we have downtime, even like during COVID and all stuff, like there's I handle all the back end stuff. So like there's plenty for me to do. There's plenty of stuff. You know, this part of why, you know, that collection of Nirvana covers got sorted, the collection of the other covers got sorted, you know, some back end stuff on the website. This, you know, like that stuff happens because there's a little bit of downtime, and I'm like, okay, well, let's tie this off, let's fix this, let's consolidate this. Like that's what I'm doing during the downtime. I'm still working. I don't you know, that's the only way I have to. I have a lot of interests, you know, and I'm just not a person that can, if I take my attention off of something for too long, I might not pick the thing back up. So I have to like sort of stay engaged with something. Otherwise, it might end.
So then we as fans can be happy that sometimes you get a little downtime for you to sort all the older stuff and get this thing together and that thing together. Very interesting. I have two more questions before we come to the infamous quickfire round at the end. One of them is, I think, a very easy one. We have all heard the news of Gilead Media shutting down, more or less. And you have published on that label. So how do you feel about Gilead or Gilead? I still don't know how to pronounce it correctly. How do you feel about that label calling it quits?
Adam's been saying that for years now, so I don't believe it. He says that, and then something will pop up that he wants to do, and he'll just do it. So, like,
so he's just like you. When something comes up, you just got to follow it, huh?
Yeah, he's full of shit. He's no. I wouldn't worry too much about it. And the thing, you know, the whole point, you know, he's shutting down the label because he's so focused on his record shop right now. But I mean, all it would take is something he wants to do to like. I'm not that worried about it. It's not like he's not going anywhere. And I mean, Gilead he hasn't really been putting out too much last year. He's mostly been sort of reissues and it's sort of like bands he's been putting out. I mean, I wouldn't worry too much about that.
That's a good thing to hear.
And I'm friends with Adam, so yeah, I don't care. I mean, I don't care. I mean, the record label's cool and all, but like he's my friend first, so like I just, you know, it's not like he's dying or something. I'm just calling, you know what I mean? Like, if anything, I hope like the shutting down the label sort of motivates him to put on another Gilead Fest, because me and him have been talking for years that he needs to do another one in Oshkosh. Just those first couple Gilead Fest, especially the second one in Oshkosh, I mean, incredible. Like closest thing to like a road burn over here that I've ever experienced. Is awesome, incredible, great bands. All people we're friends with. I mean, love it.
And the second one, I mean, you have mentioned, you live in Louisiana, and, I know that Louisiana is not 100% the South, because there is no 100% of the South. But are there certain elements of Southern life, of Southern culture, that you really embrace, and others where you say like, oh, get the hell away with that?
Well, I mean, I live in New Orleans, and and I grew up in like the suburbs of New Orleans. So like I'm in a sort of like progressive bubble down here.
Within the South, yes.
Within the South. I mean, there's still a lot to be desired with some of people's beliefs and the way they interact with society. But like I'm not out in the sticks somewhere dealing with the real boneheads and stuff, So I don't have to deal with like as much of the negativity as like you would see if you just drove an hour outside of town or something. In terms of the impact that the South has had on us, or New Orleans, Louisiana, Baton Rouge has had on us, I mean, the way the people are in terms of friendliness and openness and frankness, and you talk to somebody for 5 minutes and you're on a friendlier level than you probably would be if you were in most other cities in this country, let alone the world. I mean, those social interactions, like the deep connections you make with people growing up and other people you make, you cannot beat that down here. I mean, it's just culturally, like it's a sort of hard thing to articulate. But that's had more of an impact on us than say like Black Sabbath blues riffs or whatever people think of New Orleans.
Would you say that it's like the hospitality thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And as you've just mentioned, Sabbath, I mean, like a lot of people associate your band with sludge or doom metal. I would say I wouldn't like to categorize Vow in any way, but very often people have been talking about the connection that you have less with bands like Sabbath, and also less with Robert Johnson or any blues stuff. But a lot of people have seen the connection that you have with grunge music. Would you say that the connection comes a lot from the introspective nature of your songs and also of the band in a way? Because that to me is very often what I associate with grunge. People who are able to push their innermost problems to the front.
Yeah, I mean, yes. Spiritually, politically, sonically, I think we take a lot more from that. I mean, we grew up on that stuff. I mean, I'm 44. The other guys are just a little bit younger than me. We all grew up in the 90s on all that stuff when it was exploded. So yeah, without a doubt. But we're also a product of our environment too. So, even though I'm not a metal, was like a punk hardcore dude. So like I Hate God, which I also sort of consider like a punk band, like, yeah, that is gonna have an impact on us, and Crowbar and all sorts, like, of course, like we grew up seeing these bands, like, of course it's gonna have an impact on us. So but I mean that even all of that stuff, like that wasn't the impulse to create Thou came from, you know, the dudes before me discovering Pelican and late era ISIS and that kind of like that was like the blueprint for the band. And then I think, you know, as you progress, you know, if you're, you know, if you're like us, all those other influences just start creeping in. I mean, it's there's no avoiding it. I think, and I mean, we're not like ashamed of those influences. I mean, that's great. I mean, we want to. I mean, especially this record, I've tried to like cram all kinds of crap in there, you know, like lyrically and with quotes and this and this. I'm like, I'm always trying to do that on Thou Records and all of our stuff, output, whatever. But like specifically this record, I went ham on trying to like, you know,
to me, there's a lot of ebullition on the record. A lot of ebullition records is on there, but at the same time, there is a lot of groove on some tracks. You know, and on some of the tracks, I felt like, okay, that is what a modern day version of groove metal could sound like. Pushing forward, but never sleazy. Never sleazy.
Well, Andy has said that like his original idea when he started writing the record was to do like our take on our kind of version of like Tool's Undertow, like something like that in that realm. I think we probably got way off track of that, as we inevitably do. I mean, we always sort of have these like starting points of these grand ideas, and then, you know, as it gets filtered through how the band works and how we all write together, you know, that always changes in a lot of ways. But yeah, I mean, that's sort of like where his mind was at when he started writing the record, at least. I don't know if I don't think we got that. Maybe the next one.
No, it's not really Undertow. No. But by the way, you've been talking about the writing process. Would you describe your writing process as a democratic one, open to everybody, or are there still 2, 3, 4 people, not 2 people, who come up with most of the stuff?
So the way it used to work when I joined Thou is that Andy would write a song, bring it to practice. Here's a song. Blah, 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 blah. All right, you play this, you do this, and I'd kind of figure it out, whatever. Or Matthew would write a song. All right, here's a song. You know, the same thing. Or Andy would have half a song. Matthew would have half a song. Oh, these 2 things fit together. Great, we got a song. This is how it goes. And it was like the 2 of them sort of like calling the shots in terms of like what the music sounded like and the timings and the placement and all that stuff. As we've gotten older, everybody sort of had more opinion, starts asserting more opinion. Oh, let's do this a little bit less. Let's do this a little more. I don't know about that riff. Oh, this riff needs to be sad, or this riff, play it like this. Always. So there's a lot more these days. There's a lot more of us tweaking things out. Umbilical, 1,000%. I mean, it's part of why it took us so long to write. I mean, we started writing it in end of 2019, beginning of 2020. We got sidetracked with the Mismer thing and with the Norco soundtrack and this and that. But a big part of the writing process and why it was like a little slower is that everybody had a lot of opinions about how we wanted to change stuff and weren't quite sure about this thing or that thing. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a bit more, I wouldn't say democrats, say consensus based, you know. So yeah, but these days everybody you know is sort of like going for it, even down to like, you know, Tyler was arguing about a very minor bridge transition in Narcissus Prayer that we like changed at one point, and then we thought, should we change it back? No, let's keep. And so it's like, you know, even stuff like that, you know, like minor stuff, we'll kind of go back and forth and try it a few different ways. And yeah, so there's a lot less of like the the, I mean, Andy and Matthew still write the bulk of the songs, and more specifically, Andy has been writing the bulk of the material for the last X amount of years. But he sort of, you know, and not to diminish that, like that's like huge. But you know, these days we sort of treat it as like, well, this is the skeleton of the idea of the thing. This is what I came up with. And then we kind of dismantle it and pull it, you know, put it back together. A lot of times too, it's just stupid. Like we'll change a bunch of stuff and go down some rabbit hole and like, let's go back to the way you wrote it. You know, like, so there's a little bit of that too. And in this record specifically, Mitch wrote a song, and I don't play any instruments, but we took a song and a half from that electronic-ish thing that me and James Whitten are working on, and we stole that for this record. So I sort of contributed a couple of songs.
Yeah, we finally got some rain here in Germany.
Nice.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting, and I'm still looking forward to that Pretty Hate Machine thing. I think that would be a very, very nice thing.
You know, look. See, here's where we all get in trouble, because we'll say a thing's gonna be like this or that, and like the idea is, it's like a vague idea in our head, and then once it gets through the machine, it doesn't sound anything like, you know. So like, I mean, at best, we're looking at a downward spiral type industrial record, but you know, like here's the thing. Just to go off on a tangent on this for a second, like, the Body has done a bunch of industrial style records. We're friends with Uniform. They do industrial type music, and that stuff's great, but it's a certain type of thing. It's like, it's a heavy band doing industrial. So it's like power electronics, or it's like very frenetic, like Ministry, Wax, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, my thought and my impulse for the last Body record we did, that I was pushing for, that we never did, which is why I wanted to do this other thing, was, let's do an industrial record, but let's not do what every metal band does when they do an industrial record, which is just do a heavy electronic version of that band. Let's push it in another direction. And Pretty Hate Machine for me is like a starting point, because it is like a rock band type record, but it's just filtered through this like industrial pop sort of sound, which is why to me it's like interesting. And that to me would be like an interesting take for us, because even though we are on paper a very heavy sort of bludgeoning band, I think the melody that we use could be repurposed in a way, similarly how we do with the Emma record. It could just be repurposed in a way to like create a sort of like pop. I mean, I say pop, but just like a more like, you know,
more accessible,
more palatable. I don't know.
Would you agree that, because you've been talking about the different approaches, would you rather do an electronic record filtered through the rock sound, or a rock band trying to do the electronic version?
Well, I mean, I think it would be a mix of both. I mean, that's why like Downward Spiral is probably like more of like my touchstone, because like, to me, I mean, just in terms of like a very hyper reductive concept of those early Nine Inch Nails records, like Pretty Hate Machine is the sort of like pop electronic record. Broken is the like rock band, basically doing an industrial record, but it's just rock music. And then Downward Spiral is sort of like the cohesion of those two things, where they're like sort of jaggedly fit together. Like Downward Spiral is kind of more where I'd want to go. That's not my favorite Nine Inch Nails record, but like the way it's sort of like meshed together is really interesting to me. And I think that like we could probably do interesting. I mean, we have like, dude, this thing I got is like 10 songs. We got like 10 songs sort of written. They just need a lot. They need a lot of polish, and they need me to they need me to bring in some of the other thous to actually put, some of the spice on it.
So, Bryan, first of all, thanks for all the insight into the band, the writing process, and of course into the new record. But
Yes,
I
sir.
cannot let you go without dealing with the infamous quickfire round. You will get always two pairs, like AC versus DC, New York versus Chicago, the mountains versus the sea. And you have to make a choice and give a short explanation if you want to. I tried to divide this one into 3 sections, also looking a little bit at your musical taste. Let's start with the grunge stuff that we have already mentioned. Which song would you rather put on right now, Rusty Cage or Lithium?
Lithium. I mean, I love Soundgarden, but Nirvana is my all-time favorite band.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
No problem. You don't have to be sorry. Black versus Rooster.
Black? What
the Pearl Jam Black?
Oh, the Pearl Jam Black. Oh, versus Black. Rooster's cool. Rooster's maybe a little sort of, I don't want to say hokey, but like I probably heard it on the radio one too many times.
Mm-hmm. Two very famous super groups coming out of Seattle were Mad Season and Temple of a Dog. I'll give you River of Deceit by Mad Season versus Hunger Strike by Temple of a Dog.
River of Deceit, although I love that Temple of the Dog record. I love both those records. But the Temple of the Dog record is like more like I probably listen to that more than I have the Mad Season record. But I probably feel more of a spiritual kinship with the Mad Season record.
Very similar. And I think the Mad Season record is one of those records where sometimes I also find myself just listening to single songs. Whereas with a Temple of a Dog record, it's mostly spinning around.
Yeah. We were gonna cover I Don't Know Anything and Lifeless Dead. Me, Matthew, and Josh had learned them and recorded at one point. And I think we kind of irritated Mitch and Andy. We recorded them without their permission. They were kind of mad and we don't want to do this. We don't want to do this. But there is a recording somewhere, three piece
sometime, right?
Maybe.
So then the next section for me was the hardcore section, and I tried to come up with records that have been released on one of 3 different labels. So I'll first give you my Abolition couple. Iconoclast's self-titled record versus Downcast's self-titled record.
I don't like either of them, really. I mean, Downcast never clicked with me. Probably Iconoclast over Downcast. Downcast never clicked with me. Iconoclast I like, but what's the song? I Like You Less Than Apple Pie. That's like my jam on that record, but I don't really like the record.
Mm-hmm. Is there another, or which Abolition record?
Reversal
records? Man. Yeah, that would be your favorite?
Yeah, This Is Medicine. Probably my favorite Abolition release, I would say. But I mean, as a whole, I just like that label's output. And I like the love Lisa. Lisa's awesome. I deal with her all the time at the record shop. Awesome. We've been over there at that spot a couple times. That XXX, Some Ideas Are Poisonous compilation. Great.
Yeah.
Also, Policy 3. Manumission.
Vermifrom, that record label that you've also, I know you like a lot. Rorschach's, what is it? Sedate.
Who Remains Sedate?
Yes. Versus Born Against, self-titled.
Born Against. I mean, I love Rorschach, but dude, Born Against is like my top 5 hardcore bands of all time. Yeah, of course. Love Born Against. Jesus.
You see that I like to take some of the older stuff, and the same is with Crime Think. Zegata's Namaste versus Gehenna's The War of the Sons of Light versus and the Sons of Darkness.
Man, that's like a battle of good and evil right there.
That's why I chose it.
Honestly, probably the Gehenna. I mean, I like Zagoda more than I like Gehenna, but I probably like that Gehenna record more than Zagoda. If you had said movement in the music, I definitely Zagoda. I love that first Zagoda record, incredible. And then those later two, Namaste and Reclaim. There's like a couple of songs that I like a lot, but those two records, I don't know if it's just the production or whatever, but that first Zagoda record, so good. That Neil Young cover they do is incredible. Yeah, love that band. Gehenna though, like the infamous Gehenna.
Yeah, very infamous. I know.
If I don't say Gehenna, Mike Cheese might pop out back here and bite my ear off or something. Like I gotta say Gehenna.
And
what's it? Is that the one with the bottom line? Straight edge, I win again.
Yeah, I think that's one. I'm very sure.
Yeah,
and
best
last triplet is based on your love for country music. And I do not condemn that. You know, I do not condemn that.
I only like modern country music.
Yeah, but I looked at your country playlist that you have on Spotify. Yeah. There is also some little older, like 10, 15 years or something like that. Very modern country. And that's one of the next couple I have for you is very controversial because I know that a lot of people do not even consider both tracks country.
That's right.
Old Town Road versus Meant to Be.
I don't know if I like was Meant to Be. Is that Florida Georgia Line? Who is that?
That is Florida Georgia Line with EB. I don't know how to pronounce her name.
Yeah, that's definitely the one for me. Anything Florida Georgia Line. Florida Georgia Line is so funny because they're like very country, but they're also like a not country at all. It's just garbage music. I love it. It's incredible.
It's you then will like the next couple. That Florida Georgia Line is just sometimes just simply too accessible. And I think the next two artists are also
Florida Georgia Line is like too accessible, but inaccessible. You know, like especially a certain punk type will just like, you know what I mean? That's why I love about it. It's crazy.
Yeah, and you can annoy people with that.
Fringe benefit.
The next two artists are also very accessible. Chase Rice versus Thomas Rhett.
Probably Thomas Rhett.
You make my daughter really happy.
Are y'all listening to pop country out there? It's hilarious.
No, but she no. I don't know why she got into country a few years ago because I was playing it during the summertime in the car, and she is a huge Thomas Rhett fan. You know, if he ever does a concert close to us, I'm very sure I will have to go.
Well, you know, I started listening to that stuff because somebody put on that Craig Morgan song, "What I Love About Sunday." Incredible song. And I don't know, I just got real deep. I mean, it's so like kind of hokey and it sort of perfectly encapsulates a mentality of like the suburbs that I grew up in a way that I find like very amusing. But I also just started listening to it as like a palate cleanser. You know, you go on tour for us, we go on tour and play with like heavy bands every night. You know, we're like well-balanced people that have a lot of different interests. So like we don't want to just listen to that or be just in that world. So I mean, for me, it was like a great way to sort of like clear the cobwebs.
Yeah, definitely. It's something that you can put on. It's not too bad unless you pick the wrong artist, but politically set or so. But otherwise, it's just something that you can listen to and it just works.
Even that's such a joke to me. I like some Toby Keith or something.
Yeah, what was it? Was it Jason Aldean who has this very controversial track in the States a few months back? I don't know. But I never got that. Although I never got Jason Aldean. Two guys that have been doing it for quite some time. Zac Brown Band versus Blake Shelton.
Man, you know, I'd probably say I'd want to like Zac Brown Band more, but I'm gonna have to go with Gwen Stefani's husband, Blake Shelton.
Well, but you know, the way that Shelton goes through wives, you know, she might not be.
Maybe they've been together. They've been together for a minute though, I think. No, I like his stuff a lot. His stuff. I mean, he's another one that's like kind of super hokey, and there's like, I'm not into the ballads. I like the kind of funny, or what I think is funny.
Yeah, that stuff like Boys Round Here, right? Stuff.
I love it.
It's not Granddaddy's Gun. That's something where I'm like, forget it. All right. So, Bryan, thanks for all the details. Thanks for the good laughter. I think that is very important in an interview. For everybody, listen to Umbilical if you haven't done so by now. It is a record that, as our writer Hunter said, it made him believe in music again. And I can understand why. Bryan, enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Thank you for everything. I appreciate it.
Yeah, highly appreciate it over here.